Hello and welcome today. What day is it? Is it the 15th? I think it's day 15. I can't even remember what day it is, but I think it's day 15. So, Christmas stories. And Kitty, right here again, she just really likes this tree. I think today I'm going to read you a story from Guide's Greatest Christmas Stories. There's a lot of neat ones in here. I might even read you two little ones. The first one is called 7 Suitcases. How am I ever going to get this shut? John thought as he placed the last article of clothing into the suitcase. He pushed and groaned, perspiration beading on his forehead and nose and trickling down his face, but the suitcase defied every effort. In desperation, he cried out to his sister, "Come and help me shut this thing!" Their holiday at Perth on the southwest coast of Australia was at an end. They wished they could stay longer because they had enjoyed their vacation very much, but they were to leave the Sunshine City by train at 4 o'clock that afternoon. "Fancy having to go home on Christmas Eve," John grumbled as he struggled with the catch, while Ruth sat firmly on the lid. "Others are just beginning their holiday, and we have to go home. I bet we'll have a hard time getting a taxicab." "Cheerful Charlie," Ruth remarked, as with a mighty heave the catch caught in the socket and the bulging contents of the suitcase were finally trapped inside. The road outside their guest house was busy all morning as cars sped in both directions, carrying people to their holiday cabins. After lunch, however, there was a noticeable decline in the number of vehicles. By mid-afternoon there was not a car to be seen. Mother made a final inspection of the house as Father counted the suitcases to be sure none had been forgotten. 7, he sighed. "I do hope that we can get them all into a taxi. Why do we have to have so much luggage?" The children knew which suitcases they were to carry, so armed with their loads they struggled out to the porch to wait while Father went to hail a cab. Minutes ticked by, and the children grew restless. Where was Father, and what could be keeping him so long? Mother glanced anxiously at her watch and exclaimed, "Oh, it's almost 3:30. If we don't hurry, we will miss the train." Mother walked over to the telephone booth on the corner of the street. She placed some coins in the rack and dialed the number. It seemed like forever before anyone answered, but at last there came a voice. Mother frantically pushed the button for the coins to slide into the box, but the box was already full and wouldn't accept any more coins. And because the coins would not go into the box, Mother was not able to call for a taxi. About this time, Father returned to announce that he had walked 3 blocks and passed 3 taxi stands, but there was not a taxi to be seen. Just then a taxi turned the corner. Father quickly hailed it. As the driver slowed down to a halt, the children hurried over with the suitcases. The driver took one look at them and muttered, "I'm sorry, I can't take all those suitcases," and then he drove off. Father's mouth sagged and his eyes bulged as he watched the taxi go out of sight. The children looked at one another in disbelief. Mother remarked, "Well, what do you think of that? It looks as though we won't make the 4 o'clock train, and you all know how difficult it is to get tickets at this time of the year." "Let's bow our heads in prayer," Father said. So there on the street corner, the whole family bowed their heads while Father offered a simple plea to God to help them in this difficult situation. God sometimes answers prayer quickly, and to everyone's surprise, a taxi was pulling up to the curb as they opened their eyes. "You look as though you want a taxi," said a cheerful voice. "Where do you want to go?" "To the Interstate Rail Terminal, please. We have to catch the Transcontinental at 4 o'clock. Father was already lifting a suitcase into the cab. The driver glanced at his watch and whistled. "You're cutting it close. We'll have to hurry if we're going to make it. Fortunately, there isn't much traffic on the road, so if you'll just hold on, we'll step on the gas." With that, the taxi took off with a jerk. Mother closed her eyes because she hated going so fast, but the children enjoyed every minute of the ride. "You're an answer to prayer, my friend," Father said to the driver. "We've been trying to get a taxi for almost an hour and had just about despaired of missing our train. We closed our eyes and prayed, and when we opened our eyes, there you were. God answered our prayer right away." "That's interesting," said the taxi driver. "I'm not on duty today. I was on my way to my mother's for Christmas Eve dinner when I saw you standing on the corner. Something seemed to tell me that you were in trouble and needed a taxi, so I pulled over." I'm sure it was God who told you to stop and help us, and we are very grateful to you for your kindness," Father said. It was 3:55 when the taxi pulled in at the terminal. The children grabbed their suitcases and hurried toward the ticket turnstile, while Father stayed to pay the driver and to thank him again. "Count it as a Christmas present," the driver said with a grin, refusing the money that Father held out to him. "I was pleased to be able to be your answer to prayer. Christmas will be more meaningful to me now that I've helped someone in need. Merry Christmas, my friend." And with that, he drove away. Father stood there and offered a short prayer of thanks to the Heavenly Father, and suddenly realizing the time, he raced down the platform to where four small hands waved excitedly. Father jumped onto the train. The guard blew the whistle and the train slid noiselessly out of the station. They were all on board, and so were the 7 suitcases. All right, there's another short one in here that I don't want to read by itself. You may have heard this. This is a pretty neat one. It's called A Truce for Christmas. Christmas Eve, 1917, came during World War I. In France, armies of millions of men faced each other in a hopeless stalemate. They lived in cold, muddy trenches in the ground, the Germans and the Allies in parallel lines with a few hundred feet of barbed wire and no man's land between them. Each side pounded the other with millions of pounds of artillery shells and sometimes poison gas. Tens of thousands were being wounded and killed. As the night drew on toward Christmas, the men thought longingly of Christmas at home. Their homesickness made them hate the frightful war all the more. It seemed so terribly sinful compared to Christmas. Suddenly, at 10:30 p.m., exactly, the German artillery stopped firing. The Allied soldiers wondered what was going on. What were the Germans up to now? Were they going to use poison gas again, or was this the lull before an all-out attack? Not long after that, the Allied guns in the rear fell silent. The men in the trenches waited anxiously in the strange quiet that settled over the front. Then the incredible news came through. The German High Command had asked for a truce for Christmas. At 10 minutes before midnight, bugles sounded the ceasefire. The truce was official. From both sides, flares lit up the black night. The Allied soldiers watched as the Germans clambered out of their trenches without weapons of any kind. They stopped on the banks of dirt and took off their helmets. Then someone started singing, "Silent Night, Holy Night." In a kind of awe, the Allied soldiers came out of their trenches and joined in singing the lovely Christmas hymn. Even before the song was over, engineers came from both sides and were attacking the barbed wire. Moments later, men who had been enemies poured through the gaping holes. Hands outstretched, they greeted one another like long-lost friends. Whenever possible, interpreters helped out, but language didn't seem to matter. They showed one another photographs of loved ones at home. They tried on one another's hats and tunics and laughed at the way they looked. Then someone suggested that there should be presents, so they scuttled back to the trenches to see what they could find. The Allies produced cans of jam and beef. The Germans brought great long sausages. Chaplains on both sides arranged services. Germans and Allied soldiers celebrated communion together. Then they joined hands and sang, "Blessed be the tie that binds." Nobody wanted to sleep that night. The happy fellowship continued after the day broke and through the morning. Just before noon, snow began to fall, and the men had to head for cover in their trenches. Moments later, the artillery moved into action, and once more the awful gunfire began. The truce hadn't lasted long, just 12 quiet hours in 4 years of bloodshed. But it gave the world a fleeting glimpse of what a paradise this world could be if men would only heed the Prince of Peace, the Christ of Christmas. I think that is so neat. Anyways, hopefully we all will experience peace of a lot of different kinds this Christmas season. I hope you have a good evening and a Merry Christmas. And if you have a little kitty cat, enjoy her or him as well.